Welcome to Our Last Meal, the podcast on grief, loss, and food. I'm your host, Andrew, and every episode, I talk with a guest about grief of someone special, framed around the foods and meals that meant the most to them. This week, I was lucky enough to speak with comedian Dave Stone about barbecue, fast food, and his late father, Don Stone. I just have to say up front, I am a huge fan of Dave, of his stand-up, of his other podcast work. I'm going to have all that linked in the show notes. This was an episode I've been excited about for a while now. Dave was such an easy to talk to guy, just really nice. And it's kind of hard to explain just how much this meant to me getting to talk with him. Dave's a good dude. At the end of the episode, he does give a recipe for pimento cheese. If you're not from the South, you've probably never heard of it, probably never had it. It's delicious, and his recipe is killer. So hang around to the end. Make sure to get that recipe. Try it out. Let me know what you think. He's going to talk about some podcast work he does, as well as his new special, Pack a Lunch. I'm going to have links to all of his information in the show notes, and I just encourage you, if you're not familiar with him, go check him out. With that said, we'll go ahead and jump into the show. I do always like to give this content warning that the show does talk about death, so just please be mindful as you listen. Hello and welcome to Our Last Meal. I'm your host, Andrew, and my guest this week is co-host of the Boogie Monster podcast and the Stonebergs podcast. His new special, Pack a Lunch, is available on YouTube Friday, May 5th. Comedian Dave Stone. Dave, thanks for joining me.
Yeah, no problem. How you doing, man?
It's end of a long work day, but I had a couple shots of bourbon earlier, so I'm not too bad, honestly. How about you?
There you go. Good for you. I'm doing well. Yeah. I don't have the long work day thing, but yeah, I'll probably do some bourbon here as soon as we're done.
Well, hey, don't let me slow you down, man. If you need to grab it now, you do what you got to do. Yeah. What kind have you got nearby?
My favorite is, I'm a simple guy. I like Jim Beam Black.
Jim Beam Black is good.
That's my go-to. Yeah, I really like that. I'm not what you would call an aficionado. I don't know much about bourbon. I just know what I like. And Jim Beam and Jim Beam Black have never done me wrong. Well, they have, but kind of my own fault.
They've done you wrong, but that was kind of the intent.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the thing. I've got a bottle of Henry McKenna over there. I got it because it won a bunch of awards a few years ago, and so I said, well, if I ever find some, I'll buy it. And small ABC store here in just outside of Charlotte, they had a whole shelf full of bottles. They said there was no limit, so I grabbed 2 of them. When it's good, it's just I can't drink that every night. It's too damn expensive to drink that. I can't go through that one. So Jim Beam, Jim Beam doesn't. It will never steer you wrong.
No, and very affordable. Yeah. The black, the fancy one's only like $20, so I always do that.
Yeah, I like the Jim Beam Black. If I can ever find it, Buffalo Trace is good too, but that's real hard to find.
Yeah, Buffalo Trace.
Mm-hmm. But,
yeah, I like Buffalo Trace. I like High West. I do that one a lot. I think that one's made in Utah.
Something about bourbon made in Utah.
Utah. Yeah, Utah known for their spirits and alcohol. But yeah, I just found that one day and really enjoyed it. But yeah, I've thought about, at some point really jumping into the bourbon and whiskey deep into the pool and, really educating myself. But, for now, it does what I need it to do.
That's the thing. Tastes good, makes you feel good. You really can't beat that.
Yeah.
I don't know. I can't really judge anybody on their beverage choices. You like what you like. I know what I like is pretty much any kind of bourbon. I've yet to have one that enough ginger ale won't make it palatable. So
yeah, is that your drink, the bourbon and ginger?
Oh man, bourbon and ginger, that's perfect. It's the ginger ale, the ratio depends on the bourbon. Good enough bourbon, you don't need a whole lot, but if it's really bad or really rough, a little bit more, but it's always good.
Mm-hmm. Right on, man.
Well, like I said, I appreciate you coming on. I told you right before we got started, I'm
Sure.
a big fan, of your stand-up, of the Boogie Monster, the Stonebergs, and I've been listening for years now. So to have you come on, sit down, and talk with me, uh, not gonna pat you on the dick, but it's an honor.
Well, thanks, man. Thanks. Yeah, I don't mean to suck my own back, but I'm pretty proud of this new special that's coming out. But we'll see.
Yeah, and I'm excited. I've been seeing the clips. A lot of good jokes on there, and I think part of it is as a guy in the South, there's a lot of stuff I've seen just from the previews. I'm like, I can relate to that. That guy, the guy at work that always has a one-liner. I've worked with
Yeah.
a bunch of those guys.
Oh yeah, they're everywhere.
Yeah, so I'm really excited to see that coming out this Friday, and I'll make sure to promote it again. But really looking forward to that. Um,
Right on. Thanks,
yeah, of
man.
course. So I do want to jump into the topic though. I gave you a little
Sure.
heads up before the show about what we're about, and it's talking about loss and grief of people we care about, and kind of what those connections are to food. Because I've always believed that two very common things that everybody's going to experience is you've got to eat, and at some point you're going to lose somebody you care about.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, both are
Yeah,
inevitable.
and I know for me personally, I tend to associate foods and meals and experiences like that with people I care about. So I could tell you
Hmm.
about the first Valentine's dinner I had with my wife 10 years ago. I could tell you about meals I had with my grandparents. Can you? Is that something you relate to as well?
Yeah, for the most part. The only problem with that I run into is I'm usually much more into the food than the person, in question, whether it be my wife or family. I tend to get a little too excited about things. Where like, you know what it's like if you're not, and I don't know if foodie is the right word, but if you don't have a deep appreciation for food, um, some people are just like, what do you care this much about barbecue or XYZ, whatever it is. But yeah, it's like that's what I've always said too. Like you got to
Yeah,
eat. Everybody's got to eat at least a couple times a day. You might as well, make it count, make it be something. And I understand you can't just treat every meal 3 days a week like it's your death row meal. But I'm just saying, put a little effort, put a little thought, whatever it is. I and I'm sure I'm guilty of putting too much effort and thought into it, but yeah, I never understood people. My wife is that way. I have a joke about it in the special. Like food is an afterthought to
so
her. It's just she's literally one of those people that said if I could take a pill and get my nutrition, I'd rather do that. And I just don't understand that mindset. But
I don't either.
she's also very healthy and and not 80 pounds overweight. So
Yeah, I might be able to relate to that a little bit. You can look at me and tell I definitely enjoy a good meal, but I mean,
yeah,
there's something too about a good meal doesn't have to be something really fancy. It doesn't have to be
mhm,
5 course dinner. Barbecue. It's
yeah,
barbecue takes a
mhm,
lot of, if you do it properly, takes a lot of patience and
mhm,
care. But nobody
yeah,
would accuse you of being fancy for sitting down with a rack of ribs, but it's good.
absolutely, yeah, that's true.
And
Yeah,
I think about something like making something like that, and it is an experience. It's not just the experience of eating it. It is the experience of preparing it and thinking about it, and almost
hmm,
the way you can look forward to it in your head before you actually get to sit down. I mean, I love that part of a good meal.
yeah, yeah. And it's such an act of service
Yeah,
or act of love. Like if you're gonna slave over a dish for hours and hours, you're not doing that for people you don't
right.
care about. And, yeah, it's my wife is big into the psychology of things, and man, there's some chart or system that she has. Love
Yeah,
languages. Like some people's love languages acts of service, others is gifts, others, but I would probably definitely consider my love language, preparation of food.
yeah.
If I spend 6 hours on a pot of gumbo, I'm not doing that for just any old Tom, Dick, and Harry. If I'm inviting you over for dinner or whatever, and I put a lot of effort into it, that's me saying, hey, I care about you. Cooking is it's just a great way to reward the people you care about.
I love that, man. And, that even takes me to just appreciating somebody putting in the effort, even if it's not something you care for. We
Yeah.
have an almost 7-year old, and that's something I've been working on her for a long time now. Is I don't expect you to like everything. I expect you to try stuff. You got to try food,
Yeah.
especially if somebody goes to the
Yes.
effort to prepare you something. You can't just look at it and say, "Well,
Yes.
that's yucky." Like, well, it might be, but you at least need to give it
Yeah.
a shot.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Open up your mind a little bit and try things. I mean, that's growing up in the South. That's one of the things that was frustrating. Like, I love my family and I love Southern culture, but just I've definitely got family members that are closed-minded. Just in terms of like, I get being closed-minded about cultural things or political things. I mean, I don't get it, but I understand that
Some
that's
people just,
that
yeah.
exists. But like, my mom won't eat guacamole because it looks like puke, and I was like, Mom, I'm not trying to. This is not a prank. I'm not tricking you. I obviously, know what I'm talking about in regards to food. It's delicious. Just try it. Now, if you try it and it's not your cup of tea,
Fair
that's
enough.
fine. But to no thanks, not even gonna try it. Like, okay, like you're depriving yourself of so much with that
I mean,
mentality.
that I'm with you because I mean, there's so much good stuff that you really do just have to give it a shot. Before we got
Hmm.
started, I mentioned pimento cheese that I'd made from a recipe you shared before, and I don't judge me. I grew up in the South. Pimento cheese growing up was one of those things I never tried because I thought, okay, it's
Yeah.
gonna be spicy. When I was a kid, I didn't like the spicy quite as much,
Uh-huh.
and then also the mayonnaise
Yeah.
base. I've never been a big fan of mayonnaise.
Hmm. Did that ever change, or are you still not
So
a
I'm
fan
still not really a big
of
fan of
mayonnaise?
mayonnaise. I've been trying to work on it because I said I'm 36. I need to be able to. I at least need to be able to handle mayonnaise. I don't have to like it, but I have to be able to handle it. Um,
Yeah.
but I've tried different concoctions on the pimento cheese with using sour cream, using Greek yogurt to give it a little extra tang.
Yeah.
Still mixing with some
Absolutely.
mayonnaise, and it's pretty damn good. And I wish I'd tried it sooner.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's what I've tried to explain to my daughter. There are so many things that if you try them, you'll never know what you're gonna like. And you got to go back and try it again later because you might not like it
Yeah.
first go.
Yeah, and I think I read that your taste buds change or alter every seven
I've heard that
years.
too.
So you owe it to yourself to, every decade or so, at least try something again that maybe you didn't like when you were younger.
Yeah, I mean, and just I know also read too that when we're kids, we have this unlimited capacity to eat sugar. We just can't get enough of sweet. Now that I'm older, I don't really
Mhm.
like sweet stuff too much, but give me something bitter, and I love it.
Yeah.
You know. Now, you said you can't get your mom to try the guacamole. Now, what about like hummus? Can you get her something like that?
Probably not. I haven't had the opportunity. I never even heard of hummus until I moved to California 11 years ago. I don't remember hummus being around in the South, but yeah, I mean, that's another
Yeah,
one that I seriously doubt she would try. And I like hummus, but like, it's almost like baby food. It's so not bland, but like, there's really very little adventure involved in enjoying a serving of hummus,
fair.
but yeah, yeah, we've yet to broach that
Yeah,
subject.
yeah. I my parents, same. Love them, but getting them to try new food is it just depends on the situation, and that's true of a lot of my family too. I'd say I probably
Yeah.
have the most adventurous palate out of any of them, but
Mhm.
you people like what they like, and
Yeah,
can't fault them for it, I
that's
guess.
true. Yeah.
So I do want to shift a little bit into the topic. So the topic
Sure.
of grief and loss. I invited you to come on and talk about somebody in your life. Do you want to tell us who you wanted to talk about and just tell us a little bit about them?
Yeah, I figured I'd talk about well, the only person that I have lost that was really close to me would be my father. I mean, of course, I lost some grandparents, but we all experienced that. Not to
No.
trivialize it, but yeah, I've been fortunate, knock on wood, that no real close friends or anybody like that have passed yet. But yeah, the biggest loss I've faced is definitely my father. He passed away, it'll be 5 years in June.
Mm.
So he passed away in June of 18. And it was pretty unexpected, pretty quick, just a heart attack. Um, but yeah, and he was never overweight. He wasn't like a fitness and health junkie, but just good genes or whatever. He was never overweight, never smoked, hadn't drank in 40 years prior to his death. So, pretty good shape for a 75-year-old. And just, yeah, went in for a regular checkup on Wednesday. Um, on Thursday, they called him back and said he had some blockage or whatever, and then they were going to operate on Sunday. And it was a risky operation. They said, if he can get through this operation, he's going to be doing good. But he went into cardiac arrest Saturday before he even got to the operation. And yeah, I got a phone call out on the road touring. Got a phone call Sunday morning, and yeah,
I'm sorry to hear that. I know it's been a few years, but I also know things like that don't just thing that people say is that time heals all wounds, and it doesn't. Time doesn't fix things. It kind of maybe dulls them a bit. In my experience,
yeah, yeah, yeah. That's true. And one thing that brought me comfort, and I don't know if this was an original thought or I heard somebody talk about this. I think it was just something I came up with, but and I've had to since use this theory with my wife. Just in 3 years' time, she has lost her father, her mother, and her aunt and her cousin.
mm.
Like so many people in her. But my point is, when shortly after my dad's passing, every time I thought about him, my initial reaction was sadness. But now, almost 5 years later, when I think about my dad, my initial reaction is joy and happiness and good memories. And of course, if I think too hard about it, you get sad because he's not here. But now, when I think about him or hear his name, my first reaction is a smile instead of a tear.
Yeah.
So I don't know when that transition happened, but it did happen, and I'm thankful for it.
Yeah, I mean, and that it feels like it's probably a gradual thing. It's not a you just wake up one day and it's like, well, I feel like me again. I feel like it's
Yeah.
got to be in bits and pieces. My I'm thankful that my parents are still with me. I've lost in the last 2 years. I've lost two grandparents, so there's it's getting to that age where older family members getting older, and it's
Mhm.
it's a sad fact of life that it's going to start to expedite a bit, I guess. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I guess and that's one of the reasons I started this show was to just the grieving process and trying to feel more comfortable with it and understand it. Um, I will call it too. You mentioned all the loss that your wife has gone through. I will say I've again listening to the other podcasts that you do, with her, I've heard you give advice. And I would say to anyone, and this isn't the promo part, but I'll do it anyway. Go listen to the Stonebergs. Really good stuff. Um,
Thank
yeah,
you.
well, I mean, I've just the way I've heard you talk and be reassuring through hard times and through stressful events and loss and tragedy. It's one of those things. It is a nice glimpse into a very personal relationship, but also just into just somebody who's not not a professional, not knocking you, but not a professional, but just approaching you with
Hmm.
empathy. And I think that that's something that we could all stand to do a little bit more is just approach people with empathy because I mean there's at some point that's all you've got.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's useful advice in any walk of life and in any context. Just before you react, whether it be negatively or hastily, just a little empathy about other people or a specific person who you're talking about or a group of people or whatever. But I think not to get all political or whatever, but
Go.
that's what's so frustrating about social issues and political issues is just so many people seem to just forget about the concept of
Yeah.
empathy. You know?
At the end of the day, I think we've all got a lot more in common than we do have different.
Hmm.
And it's easy to forget that sometimes, but I mean, at the end of the day, we're all people. I think we all want the same
Yeah.
basic things:
Yeah.
security, your family, good meal, probably, but that's about it.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
Now, can you tell me a little bit more about your dad? You gave me a little bit of background in the before we
Sure.
connected, but
Yeah. Just was just a solid dude. He was real kind of a low key, easygoing dude. Never saw him really lose his temper or get worked up about much. And he was a great example of I don't know how to phrase this, but on how to cope or outgrow childhood trauma. He basically was an orphan. Um, his father was in World War II and was kind of back and forth around the time that my dad was born. His biological mom, by all accounts, not a great mom, not a great wife.
uh,
Um, And at about 4 or 5 years old, I think both parents just kind of washed their hands of the whole thing. And my dad wound up in an orphanage
Mm.
and spent time in actual orphanages, spent time with foster families, was kind of kicked around. And this is up in Detroit in the mid 40s, late 40s, born in 42. But he used to tell the story when he was about 6 or 7 years old. He was with a foster family, and he never went into much detail, but just from context clues, uh, he was most likely definitely a victim of some type of
Mm.
abuse. I'm hoping it was just emotional, but it was probably more than that.
Oh.
But he was with a foster family that was mistreating him, and at 6 or 7 years old, he told him to take a hike, and he left and was actually homeless. He slept on the streets of Detroit for like 3 or 4 weeks. He was literally homeless. He used to always talk about Erskine Avenue in Detroit, and just sleeping on cardboard boxes, literally on the sidewalk. Did that for about a month, and then had enough of that. You imagine being a 7-year-old boy or girl or anybody, or even a 50-year-old person, but
God.
just especially as a child to try to kind of come to terms with, oh shit, I don't really have a family, I don't really have a home. Um, but yeah, used to shoplift for food. But yeah, did that for about a month, and then he had distant family in Tennessee, and somebody that he knew, a friend of a friend, some group of people were driving from Detroit down to Nashville, and he caught a ride with them at 7 years old, and went down to Nashville, and his aunt, his father's sister, um, this lady named Nora, she's like, they called him Little Donnie. They're like, oh, Little Donnie needs a place to stay. Tell him to come over. And yeah, when he's 7 years old, went down to Nashville and lived with his aunt for another 10 years until he graduated high school and joined the army. But point being is, just a really traumatic childhood. Um, but as an adult, you would have never known it because, of course, I don't know what kind of inner turmoil or demons or trauma he dealt with, but he was great at a poker face. Like he just, he talked about it some, but he didn't let it ruin his life or dictate his personality or his morals or ethics. He was just absolutely just a stand up dude, and um, yeah, joined the army at 17 and was there for about 3 years, and then just got out of the army, moved back to Nashville, and just started his life there. And did never had like one steady career, but just not college educated, so just did what he could do. Just always different jobs. A very entrepreneurial spirit. Even when I was a teenager, he had like 4 or 5 jobs. He always had one. Like, yeah, he somehow got into finance and banking and stuff. Um, yeah, that's a weird segue from his upbringing. But even with that, always had side hustles. He had a firewood business, he had a vending machine business, but just always these side hustles. And just I guess the moral of the story is like he would always say, your past doesn't identify you. Learn from your past, but don't dwell on it. And and of course everybody responds and reacts differently. But that's why I've never had I, that's not fair. I'm not going to say I didn't have sympathy, but you see a drug addict or an abusive alcoholic, and they're like, "Oh, well, I had a bad childhood." Well, that I'm sorry, but at some point you got to look in the mirror and be responsible for your own life, and figure out a way to pull yourself out of that.
Will be the one to
Um,
break the cycle. And
yeah,
that's not easy.
exactly. Yeah.
Because and the
Hmm.
trauma thing that can come in a lot of different ways. I mean, I personally think it's all relative, right? You can't
Hmm.
compare, and I've talked with with other people about this. You can't compare two different traumas or two different experiences.
Of
You can
course.
talk about them, you can share,
Of
but
course.
you can't really say, well,
Hmm.
you had it worse than me. How are you better off? Or I had it harder.
Yeah.
It is all relative, but I mean, and here's the thing, and it's not easy. Deciding to break that cycle
Hmm.
is not easy because there's so much tries to drag you back, right?
Hmm.
I don't know if this makes sense, but there is something so alluring sometimes about sadness or about just letting that overtake you, letting
hmm
that, I don't want to say demons because that feels cliche, but you know what I mean. It's something about
Yeah,
letting that kind of that dark feeling just kind of take over. You can grab hold and say, hey, no, 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 we're down here now.
yeah,
But it is, you got to try to fight it sometimes, and it's not easy. And I think the biggest thing
hmm
you can do is I go back to empathy, but then ask for help too. When you need it.
yeah, yeah. And that's I think that's what's a shame about his generation was, it was much more difficult to ask for help
Yeah.
back then. Therapy was not as available or even socially acceptable, and you know how it is, especially being a man from the
Oh yeah.
South. Rub some dirt on it, walk it off. Nobody wants to hear your problems, but
Even now.
I don't know how he did it, but he just had kind of this, and he wasn't like an overly spiritual guy, but he just kind of had like this inner zen of like, we'll just we'll deal with things as they come, but until then, let's try to find the bright side of life.
I know you said he didn't go into too much detail about it. He'd talk about it some. Did he ever say that that kind of feeling, that inner zen, or just that perspective, that it came from his experiences as a child?
No, he never talked much about it. I don't know where that came. I say he wasn't spiritual, but like he was a Christian. He was big into the church, and um, I always feel uncomfortable talking about Christianity, but that's a whole other can of worms. But he had a relationship with Christ, and I'm assuming a lot of that came from that,
Yeah.
because it wasn't coming from many other places. He had, no parental support. He had one sister who he kept in touch with vaguely. They'd talk on the phone once a year, kind of thing. But yeah, I don't know. I honestly, other than God, I don't know where that peace and that mentality and resiliency came from. I mean, I guess too, a lot of it was the army. He talks about, being in the military and what that does for a young man as far as structure and discipline and things of that nature. So, yeah, I think it was just a combination of things. But yeah, and he was a great example. Like he led by example. I was talking to somebody else about this the other day, and um, not to get self righteous or anything
Go
like
ahead,
that, but
man.
like never heard my dad, say a racist thing. Never heard my dad ogle women or talk about women. Like just especially as a young boy, that's just like, oh, that's how a good Southern man should act. And I know there's a lot more to it than just surface level stuff, but like, point being, I was fortunate that I grew up in a household where I wasn't exposed to domestic
Yeah.
violence. I mean, my parents had their issues like everybody, but I wasn't exposed to, you know, just the white side of outward racism. I wasn't exposed to just comfortable sexism and misogyny. He just led by example. And even as a little kid, without me even knowing it, I was just like, I want to be like that
Yeah.
guy.
Well, and
Yeah.
don't diminish that, because I think that is big. Because it's 2023. I mean, even now, I know you're in LA now. I know you still you just did the special in Atlanta. I know you still get back to the South from time to time, so I'm sure you know. I live here, so I mean that stuff, the casual racism, the casual misogyny, it's still here.
Yeah.
And it
hmm
does feel like the
Oh, yeah, I'm sure it
oh
is.
yeah, and again, not to get political, but it really does feel like the last few years it's been a lot more cavalier, with just throwing that stuff out there. So it is
Yeah.
frustrating to still, again, in this the in 2023 we still hear this stuff, and trying to
hmm
be that one to call it out. I mean, so to grow up with the example of, I just don't hear those things, I'll say those things. It's great, and it's one of those things, it does have an impact on you, because whenever
Yeah.
you see that that's not how this person who I look up to more than anybody acts, even when everyone else around me
hmm
does, it's the kind of thing that lasts with you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And yeah, like I said, I was hesitant to go there, because I'm not trying to paint myself as some moralist or I'm not perfect, but like I do take pride in having a moral
Yeah.
compass. I take pride in, I may not be the guy preaching the right thing to do, but just like my dad, I lead by example. So in LA, I've been out here 11 years, and the comedy scene, for example, on a smaller level, there's just always drama with misogyny and
Yeah.
inappropriate behavior and this and that. And you know, again, not perfect, but I can rest easy. No one's got any stories about me being inappropriate after a show or being handsy with a stranger.
Yeah.
Like I just feel like at the very least I can do as a citizen and as a man is just not get caught up in some of that BS. And again, it's not like a self righteous thing, but you know, I am proud that I'm not popping up on any of these Me Too lists or anything like that. And my point is the reason I'm not. It's not that difficult to just be to just kind of do the right thing. I don't need an award or a trophy. That's why I'm hesitant to talk about it. But my point is like just mind your business. Common courtesy, common manners, common sense, and stay out of that kind of
Yeah.
trouble.
Well, and I don't think it's being self righteous either. Just to have the opinion. I know that it's hard to patting yourself on the back is hard. I know that. But just if you just want to generalize it, just doing the right thing for no, not for for fear of retribution, not for a hope of reward, but just because I want to be able to sleep at night. I want to be able to look myself in the mirror.
Yeah.
That's the reason to do
Yeah.
those things.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll say this too. You know, look, we're both straight white men. There's a lot of privilege that comes with that, right?
Absolutely.
And I
Absolutely.
think anybody that disagrees with that, I typically don't get political on the show, but to say that it's not there, I think is horseshit.
Hmm.
So I
Oh
think
yeah.
we are
Yeah.
in a unique position that we have to call things out. We have to, you know, we have to try to do the right thing for it, for the sake of it being the right thing to do. And I
Hmm.
firmly believe that.
Absolutely. Hmm.
Man, that took a turn I did not expect, but hey, no, I mean, but I think it says a lot to you that even now, you're a full grown man that him leading by example and just, being that sign of okay, that's what I should be. I mean, and that's great to have that feeling about your dad. I always said if I could be like my dad growing up, I'd be happy. It
Yeah.
the fact that that stood with you all this time, and even now, you know, forgive me, but even 5 years on from his passing, that he's still with you, with you. I mean, and
Oh yeah. Absolutely.
that means a lot.
Yeah.
Um, I appreciate you getting heavy with me.
Yeah. That's all right, man.
Let's talk about food.
Sure.
So, what kind of foods did he enjoy? When you think about foods that you ate with him, or if it was that, that meal that, hey, this isn't just, Tuesday night dinner, but, this is something special. What were those
Hmm.
things, or what did he love?
He loved, being a Southern dude. He loved just good Southern cuisine. Probably his favorite thing. He loved fried catfish.
Okay.
Um, any chance we'd have to go eat some good fried fish, and he loved catfish and hush puppies and that kind of stuff. He loved barbecue. I got my love of barbecue from him. Now he wasn't culinary minded. He didn't cook hardly any. Although I told this story on the Boogie Monster, I think. But when I was really little, he used to cook breakfast on Saturdays. He's working his butt off Monday through Friday. Sunday we'd go to church. But Saturday, if I wasn't playing soccer or baseball or something, he enjoyed cooking breakfast. And I remember being very little, like 4 or 5, and I said, Dad, he was cooking some eggs. I said, Where'd you learn how to cook eggs like this? And just without even pause, just with a straight face, he said, Oh, I went to egg cooking school. And I was just like, Oh, okay. And literally for all the way through my teens, I think it just one day it hit me, but like my whole childhood, I just thought that he went to like a community college or like a some sort of part-time culinary school, but he went to I just thought, oh, my dad cooks really good eggs, he went to egg cooking school. Then one day I was just like 18, I was like, wait a minute, there's no such thing as egg cooking school. He was just trying to be funny, but like I just remember, like I felt like such an idiot my whole childhood. I just thought, oh, my dad went to egg cooking school. And so yeah, the only time he would cook would be like Saturday morning breakfast. But yeah, just loved all things Southern cooking: barbecue, fried chicken, catfish, all the great veggies and sides, collard greens, mac and
Oh
cheese,
yeah.
that kind of stuff. Um, yeah, I think that was most definitely like we would eat other things growing up, but we dabble in Chinese food and dabble in Mexican food, and Italian food, he could take it or leave it, but it was always just fried chicken, fried catfish, that barbecue, anything pork, chicken. Loved chicken wings, hot wings, that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. The hot wings. Now you mentioned before the show that hot wings and sporting events, that was a big thing for him.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a big deal. He was a casual sports fan, but I think as a way of like bonding with me, um, I don't know how to describe this. Like he was a casual sports fan, but if there was a big game on and he knew I had any interest in it, he would always make a point like, hey, he was a we grew up in Tennessee, so he was one of these rare Tennessee Vols slash Georgia Bulldog fans. Not a lot of crossover in those fan bases, but part of his allegiance, was from his upbringing in Tennessee. So he was always a Vols fan. But then as I got older and got into sports and football as a teenager, he appreciated the fact that I was a huge Georgia Bulldog fan. But point being, anytime there was any type of big game, and back when I still lived in Georgia, he would always reach out and be like, "Hey, Georgia, Florida's this Saturday. You want to come over and maybe bring over some wings or whatever?" But yeah, that was my best memories, just on a superficial level. Were just hanging out watching either the Braves or the Vols or the Bulldogs, and just eating some wings or maybe some ribs or something with Dad. So that's the thing I miss the most. Like if the old, if I had a time machine or if I could do any, I'd give $1 billion to go over to his place on a Saturday afternoon with a bunch of takeout hot wings and just kick it in the living room and watch a ball game with him. So, yeah, he loved wings. Was like his celebratory food. Like, oh, there's a game on or something's going on. Let's get some wings. He loved wings.
Well, man, you said superficial. I don't think that's superficial. Then if and here's where I challenge you is if you're saying that would be that's the thing, like $1 billion, give me that again. That's not. It goes back to a good meal doesn't have to be fancy. It's just it's something that tastes good. Hell, it could be hot dogs. I'm a big fan of a hot dog, but who you're eating it with, that makes a big difference too.
Absolutely.
That's great, man. Yeah, and I will say too, wings in a sporting event. I'm a big fan of that too. Getting ready for NFL season in a couple months. We just got done watching the draft. We're big fans of wrestling too, and anytime there's a big wrestling show, I'm thinking, hey, what are the snacks we need to have? Because I've got the view of it of probably closer to what he was thinking was, if I can sit down and bond with my kid over just something that we both have in common that we enjoy, good snack, a good something to entertain us, and just be together, it means a lot,
Yeah, and I'm definitely that way, and I'm sure I got it from him. But I've never been materialistic. Never really had the income to be materialistic. The only thing I'm materialistic about is if you listen to my podcast, records. I'm a big vinyl guy. But other than that, I've always valued experiences and time with friends and family more than, I'd rather, of course, the hypothetical time machine, but I'd rather have one lunch with my dad than a Lamborghini. Like it just. And I try to do that now when I can. Like, my wife, I think she gets annoyed with me sometimes just because, it's like, like I said, she doesn't really care about food. But that's the one thing the point maybe she misses. It's like, hey, I know you don't care about food, but you got to eat something. Let's go out. My thing is lunch. I love going out to eat for lunch. Just something about, I don't know. I cook dinner most of the time, but lunch, I like going out and doing cool stuff early in the day. And then, well, in LA, it's different because after 3 p.m., you're just stuck wherever you're at because the traffic is so bad. So I've gotten to this routine the last decade of all right, let me go eat lunch at noon or 1, do that, and then I can come home and beat the rush and go on about my day, what I got to do around here, being self-employed, not having an actual 9 to 5 or a job to go to. All my work is done at home. But yeah, that's one point I can never really convey to my wife. Like, it's not about the ribs, it's about us going out and having an experience together. And she's like, I got enough experience with you, we live together. But
I'm with you though, man. And I'll say specifically going out, doing stuff early. We've gotten into that habit too on the weekends. go out early, run errands, or hey, we'll go to the mall for a little bit, or we'll go, walk
Mhm.
around, some shops or something. But something about just like, okay, let's go get lunch. And when you go
Yeah.
get lunch like that, and you make it a little more of an event. Well, we got to try something. We can go to a place that we've been
Yeah.
a bunch of times. Why don't we go somewhere different?
Yes, I love trying new things with
Yeah,
food,
I mean, it feels easier to try a new restaurant for lunch than it does for dinner. And I don't know if that makes sense
Yeah.
out loud, but it makes sense to me.
No, it totally does. It's probably cheaper. Lunch is usually cheaper than dinner. It's less of a commitment, it's you can still go out and finish your day. But yeah, I agree with you. Yeah, lunch is definitely easier to be more experimental with than
Yeah.
dinner.
Hell, you got me craving lunch now.
Yeah, I don't know what it is about lunch, but I go out most days. Yeah, probably I would say 3 times a week. I just go out and I eat lunch by myself, and about one time a week I'll try to hook up with a buddy.
Yeah.
It is funny. I've been trying to work on a bit about like being the only fat guy in your friend circle. Like all my social engagements are food related. I just keep waiting for somebody. Dave, can we just go on a hike or do anything else? But like lunch, it's scratching multiple itches. Like, well, I got to eat
Yeah.
something, and I haven't seen you in a while. Let's go have lunch and just chit chat. I love just hanging out with but I also like the solitude of eating alone. I used to have a bit about most people don't like to go in and sit down at a restaurant by themselves. They're self-conscious about it. I prefer it. I don't like the whole social aspect to eating out. When it's time to eat, I got a job to do. I'm not here to chit chat. But no, in all seriousness, I love hanging out and eating lunch with a buddy. But if no one's available, I'm fine going in, sitting down, opening the menu just by myself. Yeah, just one, just me. So I've always enjoyed that.
Yeah, man. I think a lot of people do have a. I'm not gonna say a weird hang up. I get it. I think a lot of people do have a
Mhm.
trouble doing that. But once you get over that mental block, I'll
Yeah,
take off days from work from time to time, just during the week, just because sometimes you need a day just to yourself. You need time to just think, recharge a little bit, and just
yeah,
get in your head a little. And I love anytime if I'm saying, okay, I'm going to take off 2 weeks from this Wednesday, I'm going to take that day off. I'm planning out my own lunch,
hmm
a week in advance. I'm looking, okay, where am I going to be? Let me look up restaurants. What am I
yeah,
going to get? I did that a
yeah,
few months ago, and I was down to 2 or 3 different restaurants on what I wanted to eat. It's just a random lunch by myself on a Wednesday or on a Thursday, but I was looking
yeah,
forward to it, and
yeah. But
it's
those little things, it's those little moments that just your little reward in the middle of a busy week.
yeah. Well, I mean, too, connect with yourself a
I'm,
little.
I'm jealous of you. I'm jealous of you being in Charlotte. Um, You know what food I miss the most, without a doubt?
I knew you were going to
Bojangles.
say Bojangles, man.
If we had a Bojangles in Los Angeles, I'd already be dead. Or if I still lived in the South, like I could eat Bojangles 7 days a week and not bat an
Well,
eye. Just I miss it so
Bojangles
much.
is great, man. I gotta say this though. Next time you come back into the area, you need to be careful.
Uh,
Do your research on the Bojangles you're going to, because there are some. We've got one or two
oh,
near us that
okay.
have turned real shitty. Services, well, the
Really?
service isn't good because they're understaffed, and then there was one
Yeah.
I went to, I and I hate this. They don't put the sanitation score at the drive-through.
hmm
Y-
Oh, really? I haven't
No,
noticed.
well, and that's the thing, because I'm like, well, I get this and this, and I turn around, pull around, it's like, oh, it's an 87. I'm like, I just wanted lunch. I didn't want to get sick, you know.
Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah,
yeah, do your research, man. But I'll tell you, Bojangles, I'm right there with you. Bojangles is it's just so good, and Cookout's the other
yeah,
North Carolina thing, fast food wise.
yeah, yeah. Cookout I like. I've had it a ton.
Same.
My thing with Cookout is, this is really like culinary nerd stuff, but to me it tastes like a cookout, meaning sometimes, like in theory, a cookout is
Yeah.
great. Hey, Mike's having a cookout Saturday, pool party, he's firing up the grill. Okay, cool. And I love meat over a real flame, but sometimes you go to a cookout like, boy, this burger's really
Yeah.
dry. You didn't toast the bun. You didn't do, I don't know. And so that's how I feel about cookout. Like I can taste that this was cooked over a flame,
Yeah.
charbroiled, char grilled, whatever they call it. But sometimes it's just like, it seems like you're leaning a little too heavy on that one aspect.
Because you're right though. It is like a cookout, and then like, yeah, Mike's having a cookout. Problem is, Mike can't grill with his shit.
Yeah. Yeah, he doesn't really know what he's doing,
Yeah,
you know? Like, in theory, it's a great
yeah.
idea, but it takes a little expertise. But and I'm not crapping on Cookout. Like, I've never been blown away by Cookout. It's always like, yeah, it's
Yeah.
pretty
What?
good,
So
you know?
my first time having cookout, I'm 36 now. Was about oh god, I hate aging myself like this. 18 years ago, probably. And back in the
Uh-huh.
day, it was, and this has just turned into a fast food show now, and I'm okay with that. It was great. I loved it, and it's progressively. I grew up about 45 minutes north of Charlotte, in a small town, and
Okay.
so when we got a cookout
What's
there,
the name of the
do what?
town? What's the name of the town you grew up in?
Salisbury. Yeah.
Salisbury. Okay, yeah, I've heard of
Yeah,
Salisbury.
it's
Yeah.
not the thing about Salisbury. That's where Cheerwine was invented, and
Yeah.
I don't know your
Okay.
opinion of Cheerwine, but God, I love it.
Yeah, I like it. I mean, it just tastes like cherry Coke. I mean, with a little more
Yeah.
cherry, you know?
Now, have you ever had it in a
Yeah.
glass?
Or like a cherry soda
Yeah.
almost.
Now, have you had it in a glass
Yeah.
bottle?
Oh
Oh,
yeah, I think that's the only way
yeah.
I've had it. I don't think I've ever had a can or fountain. You know, it's only the glass bottle. There's one place out here, a barbecue place has
Really?
it in 2 miles from my house, Bloodso's Barbecue, which is probably the third best barbecue in LA. So I still go there a lot, and but yeah, I'm like, oh, Cheerwine
God.
just makes me feel like home, even though I'm not from North Carolina. You know, I used to even in Georgia, you'd still see it
Yeah. Well,
everywhere.
I love that stuff, but yeah, glass bottle. That's the only way to get it. Plastic can,
Hmm.
those are fine. Fountain's pretty good, but glass bottle, man, there's just something about it.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
cookout when we
I
finally
agree.
got it, I loved it. But just the last couple of years, it's every time I go in there knowing I'm going to get hurt again. And I still go back because I'm going to try it again because if it's not good, it's what I expected. But if it's really
Yeah.
good, it's worth it.
Yeah. Do they still? I can't remember, but are they one of the places where they get a little too creative with the toppings on the burger? Like, hey, you can get mozzarella sticks on your cheeseburger, and like some of that. Like, we got some places like that around here. Like, you're compensating for
Yeah,
something. Just give me a regular burger, but make it pretty darn good. You don't have to put all kinds of BS all over it.
they don't go too crazy with it. They'll do like a bacon. I think about
Hmm.
the wildest they get's like a bacon cheese, or like a steak sauce and onions. No, it's like it's
Oh,
good.
yeah,
Nothing too wild.
yeah.
But yeah,
Hmm.
if you start having to get into anything too crazy, on a burger or on a hot dog, stuff like
Yeah.
that,
What are you
yeah,
hiding?
just do something simple but do it well.
Yeah,
That's my
yeah,
opinion about
yeah.
tacos. I grew up eating
Hmm.
white people tacos, right? So old El Paso hard shell taco, barely seasoned ground
Hmm.
beef, lettuce, cheese. A little hot sauce if I'm
Yeah.
feeling fancy. But once I tried, a real authentic taco, al pastor, onion, cilantro, a little bit of
Yeah.
lime. God
I
Almighty,
need it. Yeah.
you can't go.
Oh yeah.
You can't improve on something that good, even if it is simple. You cannot improve on
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. That's another thing I miss about the South. In LA, obviously, we're known for our Mexican food, and it is great. But you know what they don't do here? White queso dip, cheese dip. Can't get it anywhere. And I grew up just going to, southern gringo
Yeah,
Mexican places. And I love just give me a fountain Coke, a big basket of chips, and a big thing of white queso dip. And man, I used to just love that so much. And you cannot
yeah.
get it here. Like they're just like, or you're lucky to even get cheese of any kind on a
Oh,
burrito. You definitely can't get it on a regular street taco. That's a no-no. But sometimes I'll order a burrito. I'm like, can you put cheese on it? And they kind of roll their eyes. I'm like cheese and meat. Wow, that's not a crazy combo.
you look at it, it's like I'm cool. I get it like the way it's supposed to be most of the time. But I explained this to my
Yeah.
wife a while back. We went to a Mexican restaurant, and I typically I've gotten to where I'll get the al pastor, I'll get like a carne asada,
Uh-huh.
something like that. But I told her I was like, we're eating at the restaurant, and there's just something about being here. I want the crappy version of give me the corn, the hard shell corn taco with a ton of cheese on it,
Yeah.
and give me that skinny little enchilada and the rice.
Yeah. The red
Oh yeah,
sauce.
yeah.
Mm.
Every once in a while.
Yeah, yeah. There's none of that out here. Everything there's a few actual Mexican restaurants and they're good, but a lot of it's like the specialty stuff that grandma made, but your typical North Carolina or Georgia strip mall gringo, El Rodeo or
Yeah.
whatever. You know what I'm talking? There's a billion of them. There's none of that out here. and I miss that so much. Just going in, sitting down. My meal's going to be $9. I'm going to get a basket of chips. Pay $3 for some queso. Oh, I love it. But yeah, there's none of that
Yeah,
out here.
and it's one of those things. I'm sure somebody listening to this is just horrified. It's not
Oh
that
yeah,
it's good. It's just that it's good. I can't explain it.
it's good, and it's yeah, it's familiar. It's nostalgic. I get all that,
Yeah.
but yeah, at the end of the day, it's still what's not good about chips and white cheese. Like
Hot melted cheese. You can't go
I don't
wrong with
know.
it.
Oh, it's so good. And the other thing, as a home chef, that is not an easy thing to make.
Getting that.
Queso is hard to make in that you've got to get the ratios right with the milk and the cheese, and you got to melt it the right way with a boiler. And like you just think, oh, it's just melted cheese, but like I've tried so many times and I still can't quite figure it out. But like, boy, they just do it so great in the Mexican joints down south.
Well, yeah, and it's everything. It's flavor. It's consistency. We had Mexican food last night. We got the white cheese dip last night, and I'm sitting here just wishing I had some more.
Yeah, yeah, I could eat that
Yeah,
every day.
I
So
don't blame you.
good.
Well, and then the other thing too, North Carolina is the barbecue. You know,
Oh yeah.
Charlotte, where I'm at is it's harder to find good barbecue. And so here's what I'll say.
Hmm.
So there are barbecue joints in Charlotte. You've got the two that I like are Midwood Smokehouse, and
I've been there, Midwood. I was about to say
I
Midwood.
like them. They
Yeah.
they do a little bit of trying to get fancy. They'll do some barbecue tacos. They do a queso dip with brisket in it, which is really good. But what I like about them, when you
Okay.
walk in there, you smell smoke, which is a sign of okay.
Hmm.
Because one of the
Bingo.
things that offends me more than anything is if I go into somewhere and they say we've got barbecue pork and it was roasted in an oven. That is not barbecue. That is roasted pork. That is not the same thing.
Yes.
You
Amen. Amen,
you
brother.
cannot roast pork and
I
give me
couldn't agree
barbecue
more.
sauce and tell me you made barbecue.
Here's the other thing. Hey, what kind of wood do you guys use? Huh? Okay.
Tells you everything you need.
I know you're just the server, the cashier, but like, I don't know. It just everybody who works here should be able to tell you at the very least what kind of wood we use or how long you smoke the brisket. That yeah. And the other thing that annoys me, as kind of a just in the little community that I have with my podcast, people know I'm a barbecue guy, and I get this a lot. Oh, when you come to my town, you got to go to this barbecue place. They make their own
Oh God.
sauce. Yeah, I hope so. Whoop de doo. Like that's not really a selling point. I expect them to make their own sauce, but like people think that's a big selling
That's
point.
bare
Like,
minimum.
yeah, they better make their own sauce.
I might piss off the whole state of Indiana. I went there for work a few years ago, pre-COVID, and I went with a guy I worked with. We went to some little town. I don't even remember the name of it. And there was a restaurant right across the street from the hotel. So we go, big restaurant. Clearly, this is the place to be in this town on a Monday night. They've got all these banners around about how they've won these awards for best barbecue in Indiana. I'm like, okay, I have a discerning palate from North Carolina. I'm not trying to brag, but I know when something should taste good. So let me try this out.
Mm.
I don't want to know what lost. If that was the best that the state had,
Yeah.
just horrible. And
Well, yeah, best barbecue in Indiana. That's
yeah, you know,
yeah,
that's
okay.
like saying you got the best Reuben sandwich you've ever had, in North Carolina. Because I'll call us out too. We're not going to give you good
Yeah.
deli food.
Yeah,
It'll be okay. It'll be
exactly.
passable.
Yeah. We got the best sushi and
West Virginia.
wherever. Yeah, best sushi in Kansas. Oh, okay. Well, way to go.
I'm just saying some little rural place in the South, selling sushi. Is that tuna? That's crappy.
Mhm. Yeah, it's crappy. We got a nice bass roll today.
You like brim? Have you ever had a brim
Yeah,
nigiri?
did a brim hand roll. It's pretty good.
I would.
Yeah, best barbecue in Indiana. Okay, I'll take your
Yeah, I
word for
know. Trust me, if that's the best, then you're okay.
it.
Get a burger.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
yeah, but speaking of barbecue, there's one place just up the road from me. They are supposed to be one of the best barbecue joints in the country. John G's. Not sure if
John G's, I'm unfamiliar.
I'll have to send you some
Unfamiliar with
information
John.
about it. It's when I say up the road, it's
Okay,
about 30-40 minutes. I have yet to make it there
okay.
because they are only open I think on Saturdays. You are going to wait in line
Uh-huh.
for a couple hours, but it is supposed to be phenomenal.
Yeah.
So
Okay. John
I've told my
G's.
wife that I want to try
I'm
this place
with it.
out. So once I do, I will let you know. I'll reach out to you, And if you ever make it out
I'm
this way,
literally writing that
here we go.
down.
Jon. Jon.
Okay. Right
Yeah.
on.
So now, and the thing is, it's got to be good because if you ever try it, man, that is my reputation with you 100% at stake. I understand that.
Yeah.
Well, hey, Dave, I appreciate you coming on. I want to start kind of winding this down a little bit. A few things I want to touch on before we do that
Sure.
is you've already kind of alluded to this, but I got to ask it anyway. I ask every guest if you had a chance to have one more meal with your father, just sit down, have that meal with him, what would that be? What would you want to have? What would you want to do?
Man, probably just watching a Georgia game, Georgia football, eating some wings, just shooting the
Yeah.
breeze. Yeah. I that yeah, without a doubt. I mean, we both enjoyed going out to restaurants and stuff, but just something about just hanging out at your parents' house, and that's one thing I don't have anymore, and I know I'm, a grown up and this happens, but after he died, my they lived in I grew up in North Georgia, but about 5 years before he passed, they moved to like middle South Georgia, a little bitty town called Worthen, Georgia. But after he passed, my mom moved to Louisville, Kentucky, to live with my brother and sister-in-law. So just that's one thing I miss is just not having my parents'
Yeah.
home, anymore. Not having the old homestead to go back to. And but yeah, if I could do anything, it would just be go back to their house in Waleska, Georgia, and just sit out on the porch and pet the dog, and maybe have the pregame on the radio, and then around kickoff we transition into the living room and bust out the wings and just sit there for 3 hours and pretend that we have hard opinions about what the coach is doing wrong, and chow down on some wings. But yeah, that would definitely just kicking it on a Saturday afternoon, watching a football game, eating wings with old pops. I'd give anything to do that again.
That sounds great. Dave, I appreciate you coming on. Before I let you go, two things.
Yeah,
I want you to talk to us about where we can find you, all the stuff you've got going on. But before we do that,
sure.
would you mind sharing a recipe with us? This is something I know you do in the Boogie
Yes.
Monster, and I'd love for you to share one with us now.
Yeah. Yeah, we were talking before we started recording about how I used to do that a lot with the Boogie Monster, but for whatever reason, I know the reason is eventually I ran out of recipes. Uh, we've been doing the Boogie Monster almost 7 years, and we try to do it weekly. So whatever that math is, uh, I don't have that many recipes, but I do need to start sharing those again, at least maybe once a month. But you mentioned pimento cheese, and my dad was a big pimento cheese guy. He loved pimento cheese. That's one of those things that, like, when I was a kid, I was like, "What is that?" Like, I like cheese, but this is weird looking. And I remember my grandfather used to just eat pimento cheese sandwiches, and I just thought that was so weird. And then, one day, I don't know if I was a teenager or whatever, I finally had some, and I was like, "Oh, I get it." But yeah, Dad loved pimento cheese on plain old white bread or pimento cheese with Ritz crackers. But yeah, I'm a big pimento cheese guy. So yeah, here this is a real simple, basic recipe. The one that I use. Get you a 1 pound block of good sharp cheddar cheese, and this is important. Grate it by hand. I mean, use a cheese grater. You don't have to scratch it with your fingernails. But I mean, don't get the bag of shredded cheese. Get you a block, grate it on the finest. I've got one of those box graters. It's got 3 or 4 different gauges on it, I guess. But yeah, on the finest gauge, a whole block, 1 pound, in a big bowl. Well, do that first and set it aside. Then in a bowl, like a big mixing bowl, let's do a cup of sour cream. Let's do a half a cup of mayo, preferably Duke's. Let's do a half a cup of cream cheese. Let's get you, if you can, now this part you can do, the actual pimento part. If you can find a little jar of pimentos, fine. Sometimes those are hard to find in
Yeah.
the grocery store. If you don't have access to a jar of pimentos, just get you one big red bell pepper. And with that, what you do is just kind of core it, get rid of the seeds and the stem and the core. Maybe cut it up into 3 or 4 little strips, but then just char that bastard. You can do it right over your gas flame if you've got that. You could put it in a frying pan or whatever. But just we want to kind of char it, get a little scald on that thing, and then when you're done with that, just dice it up real fine. However, whatever you like, the size of your little pepper bits. But yeah, throw that up in there once it's diced with the sour cream, the mayo, the cream cheese, the chopped up pepper. Let's do 2 tablespoons of red wine vinegar. Let's do a couple tablespoons of your favorite hot sauce. I do a teaspoon of smoked paprika and a tablespoon of fresh black pepper, fresh ground black pepper. If you don't have the churn thing, the grinder, if you don't have that, just regular pepper's fine. But and then a teaspoon of salt, and then just mix all the ingredients up first before you add the cheese, because if you add the cheese now, it's hard to incorporate everything properly. But yeah, just sour cream, mayo, cream cheese, red bell pepper, red wine vinegar, hot sauce, smoked paprika, salt and pepper. Mix all that up, then throw all that grated cheese in there, stir that up, get it nice incorporated. You're good to go. Just good plain southern pimento cheese. And you can experiment with that. Sometimes I'll do little peppercini peppers
Oh,
in addition to the red bell pepper, but I'll chop up some pepperoncinis or banana peppers or something. You can even do, if you like onions, you can do real fine diced raw onion, white onion, red onion, whatever. But yeah, just good like appetizer, good party snack. You go into a covered dish dinner at your church's homecoming week or whatever. You bring you that big old tub of pimento cheese, maybe a sleeve of Ritz crackers or some white bread. You'll be the belle of the
oh, it'll get
ball.
gone. I brought that to family gatherings before, and it's always I've been asked to bring it back before. That's how good it is.
Yeah,
What I
yeah, it's so good. And I'm surprised people outside the South never even heard of it. When I moved out here, and I would have football parties and stuff, and I'd make it, and all my friends are like, "What is this?" I'm like, "You never had pimento cheese?" And I'm like, "No." So I didn't realize it was such a Southern thing till I moved
Yeah,
out
and I
here.
know. Look, I know it doesn't. It may not look good. It may not sound good, but God, you try. It's worth trying. The last time I made
Yeah,
it,
just
I
cheese.
used a real spicy pepper cheese to just give it a little extra kick.
Hmm.
Oh God,
Yeah, yeah. I was gonna say some. I mean, you need some cheddar
yeah,
cheese in there, but if you wanted to use half of that amount of cheddar and the other half, like a Monterey Jack or a pepper Jack or something like that, that's
yeah.
good too.
I
So yeah,
Oh man, I'm gonna have to make that. I think I'm gonna have to make some of that this weekend.
yeah. It's so easy, and it'll last a week in the fridge, before it starts to get a little funky. But yeah, on a sandwich, crackers. If you're trying to be healthy, some celery or carrots or whatever.
Man,
But yeah, it's never let me down. It's good little party starter.
oh man. Well, Dave, I appreciate you sharing that with us. I appreciate it. I would encourage anyone listening, go make some. If you've never had it, definitely go make it. Um,
Oh
Dave,
yeah.
can you talk to us a little bit too? Last thing, what have you got going on? Where can people find more about you? And can you talk a little bit more about the special?
Yeah. When does this come out? Do you know?
So this is going to come out on May 3rd.
Little inside baseball here. Sorry to
No,
put you
no
on the
worries.
spot. I just didn't want to. Sometimes I've been doing a lot of podcasts lately, and I don't want to be. It's out now when it's not. But yeah, this comes out May 3rd, which is what, tomorrow, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Friday, May 5th on YouTube. If you go to my YouTube channel at Dave Stone Comedy, or you know how YouTube works. You can just search Dave Stone Comedy. But my first full proper special is dropping Friday, May 5th. It's called Pack a Lunch. It's a long one. It's about an hour and 15 minutes. No crowd work. I know that's the trend these days in the comedy world. Zero crowd work. I actually have prepared material.
Wow.
I don't care who's dating or what you do for a living. Um, so yeah, you tell I'm a little annoyed by all that trend, but it's not
I
comedy.
want to see you tell
Who
jokes.
cares what you do for a living?
Give me the jokes that you've
Um,
been working on and refining and doing the best. That's what I want.
yeah, exactly. Nobody paid money to come hear me talk to this guy about his job. Um, but yeah, it's hour 15 minutes. A lot of different material. Um, People who may know who I am via my podcast might know that I used to be a cop, um, but I've never talked about it on stage until this special. So I have at the very end, I talk a little bit about my experiences as being a cop. I was a cop for 4 years in Metro Atlanta. Uh, Worst 4 years of my
Yeah.
life. Terrible, terrible job. Um, but yeah, so that comes out on YouTube May 5th. Also, the exact same material will be in vinyl form. If you're a vinyl collector, if you're into the records, you can go to blondemedicine.com. That's the record label that's handling all the audio version of the special. And we're doing a pre order right now, limited edition, 500 copies on colored splatter vinyl. Yeah, 2 LP, nice artwork. But you can pre-order that now, and it ships in August. So, and then if you just want to listen to it and not watch the special, or you don't care about vinyl, it'll be available on Spotify and iTunes and all that stuff May 5th as well. But yeah, my first proper special. I've done a few albums, but I've never done like the video special. Self-financed, shot it in Atlanta, using local crews, some guys I knew, and yeah, I mean, most comedians, aren't comfortable with self promotion. Well, that's not true. So many of them are. I've never been super comfortable with self promotion. It's out there if you want, if you give a crap. But yeah, so I'm excited about it, and glad to have something else out in the zeitgeist. And beyond that, I do 2 podcasts. I do the Boogie Monster podcast with Kyle Kinane. Comedy fans are probably familiar with Kyle. I'm biased because he's a pal, but sorry about that. The wife's checking in. I'm biased. Kyle's a pal. He's obviously my podcast partner, but Kyle's one of the best comedians on planet Earth. He's got a new special out called Shocks and Struts. It's out there now. But yeah, Kyle and I do Boogie Monster. That usually we drop those on Tuesday, and then have another podcast with my wife called The Stonebergs. Her maiden name was Strandberg, so Stoneberg, and it's just kind of a call-in advice show. A lot of times we'll take calls or voicemails or whatever. Sometimes we don't get to it, but just kind of a husband and wife, two goobers offering advice. We can barely run our own lives, but we're here for encouragement and advice if anybody needs that. But that's been fun too, because it's like I don't say a different side of me, but like Kyle and I have a specific dynamic, and then obviously my wife Katie and I have a different dynamic. So we've had some comments of people enjoying seeing a different side of Dave that doesn't involve barbecue or chasing coyotes or fighting hooligans out in the street. So it's the softer, gentler Dave on the Stonebergs. So.
Well, look, and I'll say too, I'm a big fan of both shows. As far as the new special, I know the self promotion you said you're not comfortable with. I'll do it, Dave. I listened to your last album several years ago. Listened to it again last week. Hogwash, enjoyed that. I pre-ordered my my vinyl. I've got
thanks.
man. I've got it coming. I ordered it earlier today. So everyone go check it out. I'm going to link out to everything, and I'll be promoting it on my social media too. But I'm excited to hear it and see what you got for us.
Right on. Well, thanks, man. I appreciate you helping spread the word.
Man. Well, Dave, hey, thanks for coming on. I really appreciate it. It's been a pleasure, and can't wait for a pack of lunch.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on, Andrew. Take care.
Thank you again to Dave for joining me today and talking more about his story. It was really interesting for me to get to talk with him as a longtime fan. I just really enjoyed it. I really appreciated him taking the time, but also just being open with me. It's great. And, we touch on this a bit in the show. But if you're not from the South, you may not understand just some of that machismo that we talk about. Some of this, got to keep your feelings in, can't really talk about things. So for Dave to be as open as he is, I appreciate it. I just want to say, if you want to follow more about him or find out more about him, you can follow him on Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook at Dave Stone Comedy, or on Instagram at _Dave Stone. And also his new special, Pack a Lunch, comes out Friday, May 5th. So 2 days from the release of this episode. That'll be on YouTube. And you can also pre-order the special 2 LP vinyl at blondemedicine.com. I'm going to link all of that in the show notes. I really do hope you'll go check it out. I know for me, Friday night, I will be having some bourbon, watching this new special. Cannot wait. Last thing I'll say is that you can also subscribe to Our Last Meal wherever you listen to podcasts. I hope you'll take the time to also rate and review. We always say that that's a good way to get people to find the show. I would love it if you do that. share the show, share something on social media, whatever it is. I want to try to grow this as much as possible. You can also follow on social media at Our Last Meal Pod or visit ourlastmeal.com. If you are interested in being a guest on the show, you can reach out by clicking the Share Your Story button at the top of that homepage, or you can reach out to me on social media. I am always happy to talk with people and would love to let you tell your story. That said, I hope everyone has a great rest of your week. Take care of yourselves, and please, please, please go share a meal with someone that you care about.